my lords. May it please the court. My lords, I appear in the matter of Dr. Akkai Padmashali and others versus Union of India, my lords. I have submitted supplement submissions, which is a 5-page note. It is there in the written submission folder, but I also have some copies, my lords, which I'm...
What would you be, what's the point that you're going to...
My lord, this is just a more summarized version. That's all for today, since I just have 20 minutes. It's called, my lords, supplementary submissions. It's a 5-page
Yes, I got it.
Which I have submitted. And if my lords, Justice Kaul and Justice Bhatt also have it.
Yes, we've got it.
Grateful, my lords, grateful. Yes. My lords, I have 3 points to make and I'll stick to my time. My lords, our first claim, my lords, this is the second petition for transgender persons. The only other petition was by Mr. K.V. Vishwanathan of Zainab Patel. My lords, our claim here is for marriage equality for all, not just same-sex marriage, my lords. We are seeking that there should be marriage for all persons, irrespective of gender identity or sexual orientation, and that is our fundamental claim. And I pray, my lords, that that claim or that framing be given to this matter, my lords. My lords, the first issue, very briefly, because it has been covered, is on transgender persons' right to gender identity. I'm not going to labor it much, but my lords, some points need to be clarified. My lords, trans persons are persons whose gender does not match the sex assigned to them at birth. So therefore, they may be born as male or female, and whatever sex may be assigned to them at birth, but they identify with a different gender. And therefore, under NALSA, this gender identity and the right to self-determine one's gender identity was protected by this Honorable Court. And this Honorable Court held that it is not only two genders, not just male or female, but male, female, or transgender. You could identify with either any of those gender identities, even without medical reassignment. And the purpose, my lords, of granting this right to self-determine one's gender identity is to get legal recognition to a whole bunch of other rights. It could be the right to vote, it could be the right to get a driver's license, including the right to marry, which was read out. And I've written the para numbers. The right to marry of transgender persons also was specifically recognized under NALSA. My lords, in practice, what happens is that despite the recognition of one's gender identity, trans persons, my lords, are unable to exercise their full legal rights for many reasons. One, that despite NALSA, they still have to undergo medical reassignment to get their documents changed. A large number of them are not able to do that. And unless they get their medical documents changed, they don't get the access to a whole bundle of rights. In fact, technically, one could say that under the Special Marriage Act, if you come within a man or woman technically and have documents to show that, you may even be allowed to marry. But my lords, how many persons are even able to do that? And what about persons who identify not as the binary genders, but as transgender? There is no coverage of that. Yes. And my lords, there are intersex persons as well, and which are not covered at all. My lords, my second point is on the right to family. My lords, the right to family, that is my second main point, the right to family to be recognized under the right to life under Article 21. My lords, the petitioner, Dr. Akkai Padmashali, she was born male. She faced so much violence at her parental home and family that she had no other option but to leave her home when she was about 14, 15 years old. She was on the streets without her family, begging and intersex work. That is, my lords, what a majority of transgender persons have no other option but to do when they are forced to leave their homes. And therefore, my lords, what does the right to family mean? My lords, the right to marry in this case, what we're asking for the Special Marriage Act to cover. The right to marry has been upheld in a whole variety of judgments of my lords. There's Shakti Vahini, Shafin Jahan, and all of that has been read out. But my lords, the right to marry gives rise to a family, a kind of family, which, my lords, is also a fundamental right and has to be recognized under Article 21. My lords, we can have families by blood, marriage, adoption, but marriage is one way in which we have a family, and an important way. Couples can decide to marry and not have children. couples may decide to have children. And then their family unit is either the two spouses or with their children. And my lords, what does a family do? My lords, it goes to the core of our being. I read out, having the love, care, and support of a family is an essential ingredient for a person to live a full life. My lords, our families give us not only love and care, but they give us psychological support. They give us economic support. Our family is the only unit. It is the basic unit in society that we turn back to when we are in any kind of trouble. And my lords, therefore, do we not have the right to have our family recognized and the right to form our family, my lords? And that is the right I'm asking has to be recognized under Article 21. My lords, trans persons are already having their families. They are in long-term relationships, they are adopting children, and they are maintaining their families. But these families are not recognized because, my lords, marriage is not permitted. And therefore, my lords, family is not just a heterosexual phenomenon. My lords, the importance of the family as an integral part of one's personality has already been recognized to some extent under the right to privacy. And my lords, if I may just, I've extracted a couple of paragraphs. And my lords, that's in my note in para 9. May I please refer to those paras, my lords? That's para 271. It's in my note, so my lords may not have to take the trouble of referring to the Puttaswamy judgment. Para 271, my lords held. We need also emphasize the lack of substance in the submission that privacy is the privilege for the few. Every individual in society, irrespective of social class or economic status, is entitled to the intimacy and autonomy which privacy protects. The sanctity of marriage, the liberty of procreation, the choice of a family life, and the dignity of being are matters which concern every individual, irrespective of social strata or economic well-being. The pursuit of happiness is founded upon autonomy and dignity. Both are essential attributes of privacy, which makes no distinction between the birthmarks of individuals. Therefore, my lords, marriage, procreation, family life choice are all separately referred to, my lords. Then, my lords, in para 298, it follows, my lords. The intersection between one's mental integrity and privacy entitles the individual to freedom of thought, the freedom to believe in what is right, and the freedom of self-determination. When these guarantees intersect with gender, they create a private space which protects all those elements which are crucial to gender identity. Specifically in the context of gender identity, my lords held, the family, marriage, procreation, and sexual orientation are all integral to the integrity of the individual. Above all, the privacy of the individual recognizes an inviolable right to determine how freedom shall be exercised. And lastly, my lords, in the same judgment, Justice Call's referral in para 645, it is an individual's choice as to who enters his house, how he lives, and in what relationship. The privacy of the home must protect the family, marriage, procreation, and sexual orientation, which are all important aspects of dignity. My lords, recently, my lords, in the Deepika case, in fact, refer to unconventional families. My lords, we are dealing with unconventional families and have recognized them. And it is not just the marital tie, but what is the concept of family? And my lords referred to, and I will just read out one para 26. The predominant understanding of the concept of family, both in the law and in society, is that it consists of a single unchanging unit with a mother and a father who remain constant over time and their children. This assumption ignores both the many circumstances which may lead to a change in one's familial structure and the fact that many families do not conform to this assumption to begin with. Familial relationships may take form of domestic, unmarried partnerships, or queer relationships. Household may be a single-parent household for any number of reasons, including the death of a spouse, separation, or divorce. Similarly, the guardians and caretakers who traditionally occupy the roles of the mother and father of children may change with remarriage, adoption, or fostering. These manifestations of love in families may not be typical, but they are as real as their traditional counterparts. Such atypical manifestations of the family unit are equally deserving not only of protection under the law, but also of the benefits available under social welfare legislation. The black letter of the law must not be relied on to disadvantage families which are different from traditional ones. So therefore, my lords, I ask, should families where persons are trans or of a different sexual orientation, can they be denied of the right to have a family life? And my lords, interestingly, the Delhi High Court, in a 2021 judgment in Lakshmi Bhavya Taneru, this was in the case of a heterosexual couple, which didn't have children. They wanted to be together. And the court, in fact, for the first time held that this would come under Article 21, and I would read out, my lords. We have no doubt the right to a meaningful family life, which allows a person to live a fulfilling life and helps in retaining her or his physical, psychological, and emotional integrity, would have a place in the four corners of Article 21 of the Constitution. My lords, is a family different just because your gender identity is different? Are these not the same values that all of us want at the end of the day? And so therefore, my lords, I argue that this should fall under Article 21. And my lords, this has been recognized in European jurisprudence and in some of the international treaties. And I've just had a reference of these for my lords' reference. My lords, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the 1948 document, while it refers to men and women because gender identity was not an issue at that time, it still recognizes under Article 16, men and women of full age without any limitation due to race, nationality, or religion have the right to marry and to found a family. My lords, that's what I want to insist on. They are entitled to equal rights to marriage, during marriage, and its dissolution. The ICCPR, my lords, in 66 held under Article 23(1), the family is the natural and fundamental group unit of society and is entitled to protection by society and the state. My lords, we have signed up to ICCPR. The right of men and women of marriageable age to marry and to found a family shall be recognized. And my lords, the European Union, of course, has separate fundamental rights on this. The Charter of Fundamental Rights of the EU, my lords, in Article 9 holds all persons have the right to marry and the right to found a family. And the European Convention on Human Rights, my lords, Article 8 and 12. Article 8 states that everyone has the right to respect for his family and private life, his home and his correspondence. Article 12 states that men and women of marriageable age have the right to marry and to found a family according to national laws governing the exercise of this right. My lords, the Yogyakarta principles, which were relied upon by this honorable court in Nalsa, in fact, has a specific article on the right to have a family in the context of marriage. And my lords, that is Principle 24, which I have extracted. Everyone has the right to found a family, regardless of sexual orientation or gender identity. It reiterates what my lords, in fact, said in Deepika. Families exist in diverse forms. No family may be subjected to discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity or of any of its members. And it, in fact, calls for states to ensure that laws and policies recognize the diversity of family forms and to ensure that in states that recognize same-sex marriages or registered partnerships, any entitlement, privilege, obligation, or benefit available to different sex married or registered partners is equally available to same-sex married or registered partners. My lords, there are two decisions. I will not go into those, but my lords, O'Leary and others versus Italy, this was an issue where same-sex marriage was not recognized in Italy, and the court held that the denial of recognition of same-sex marriage amounts to a violation of their right to family life. And my lord, in Christine Goodwin versus UK, this was a case wherein, my lords, the European Court of Human Rights held that transgender persons do have the right to marry, and that flows from the fundamental Article 12, which is the right to found a family. And therefore, my lords, I would argue that we have to recognize that there is a fundamental right to family under Article 21, and in order to exercise that, the right to marry has to be granted. My lords, finally, of course, the Special Marriage Act and the manner in which it is construed presently by focusing only on men and women denies transgender persons the right to marry and have a family solely on the basis of their gender identity. That, my lords, amounts to a 15(1) discrimination on the basis of sex. My lords, before I go on to just my last para, I have given a proposed reading of the Special Marriage Act, which replaces men or women with persons or spouses. It's for my lord's consideration. It's there. It's in fact on the last page of the submission. Page 6, it is at the end of the submission. And my lords, so therefore my submission is that all references to male or female be read to referred to as persons, and all references to husband or wife be referred to as spouses, to include all persons, irrespective of their gender and sexual orientation, and I have given a formulation of that. My lords, I want to just end with a reference from Navtej. My lords, ultimately, these issues of marriage rights, my lords, our argument is that it is marriage rights for all. These amount to ensuring that all of us have equal marriage rights, not just one group or the other. And my lords, this was, in fact, reiterated by my lords in Navtej. And if I can just refer to the last para, my lords, that is para 425, and I have quoted it. The struggle of citizens belonging to sexual minorities is located within the larger history of the struggles against various forms of social subordination in India. The order of nature that Section 371 speaks of is not just about non-procreative sex, but is about forms of intimacy which the social order finds disturbing. This includes various forms of transgression, such as intercaste and intercommunity relationships, which are sought to be curbed by society. What links LGBT individuals to couples who love across caste and community lines is the fact that both are exercising their right to love at enormous personal risk and in the process disrupting existing lines of social authority. Just thus, a reimagination of the order of nature as being not only about the prohibition of non-procreative sex, but instead about the limits imposed by structures such as gender, caste, class, religion, and community, makes the right to love not just a separate battle for LGBT individuals, but a battle for us all. My lords, that's what I would.
I was reflecting on. Yes.
Therefore, my lords, I submit that these are issues that need to be addressed. And I pray that.
Thank you, Ms. Kudari. Thank you.
My lords, I have also submitted, I won't go into it, I've submitted an article from the Cardozo Law Review on the right to family relating to same-sex relationships. It is there for my lord's reference. I leave it at that.
Thank you, Ms. Kudari.
Very grateful.
Our brother call just.